So with no further ado, Sobonfu Somé, my soul sister.
Good morning, as I try to awake.
Good morning.
How is everyone?
Good.
How is everyone?
Good.
All right. Because we just did a prayer about being amazing, so we have to be amazing. It really is a pleasure for me to be here this morning and throughout this conference, the short times that I have been here. I really want to thank everyone who has come and who has shared, who has let the light shine as well, because we need to do that all the time. If we are really going to have the thing continue to run the women way. So as we shared that for me, I'm taking a long and slow sip of each wisdom that I am receiving. So thank you. And I want to thank the organizers for putting this on and making it possible for all of us to come. So thank you for all your hard work and for putting up with and for putting up with my delayed African response to your emails. And for Bernadette for pushing me and saying, nudging and saying, come on, Sobonfu. So, I come from Burkina Faso, and as I say, everything is slow there. Nothing is ever in a hurry. So I live in this two very opposite world. In America, where everything has to be on time, and in Africa, where time does not matter. Whenever you show up, that's the right time. And so the contradiction in going between the two cultures definitely show when I get to Africa and I'm like, all right, so I have 2-3 months. All right, so what can we do? And people are going, can you relax? I say, oh, I'm relaxed, you know. And, you know, coming here from being in Africa and, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, I'll get to it, you know, no hurry. And people are going, well, you know, this is due, don't you? And so the two parts are kind of like always, you know, at each other, you know, what you running for, what you slow for, you know. So yeah, in these countries that I come from, in Burkina Faso, life is very simple. I just wrote this contribution to this anthology called Stories of Belonging. And I was saying, it's the houses are made with cow dung, and the person said, somebody who was reading said, "Are you sure? Is that what it is?" I said, "Oh, I'm positive because I've been there. I've done it too." They're the earth made and nicely smooth with cow dung and some plant juice and ash. And it works. It doesn't smell like cow dung, I promise. And in this setting, life is based on spirit, on the sacredness of the land. Life is based on community, on what we make together. You know, somebody said that in their culture, you know, subsistence culture, agriculture. It's exactly the same. So I'm actually hoping that I will be able to bring something different because everything seemed to be all in sync. So if it's the same thing, just pretend like it's interesting. In this country I come from, nothing is ever isolated. Your joys are the joys of a collective. Your problems are the problem of a collective. And so there's never a problem that actually ever arises that they will say this is a personal problem. There's no sense of that. so that when a child is born, it is a child of a collective. When a mother is in the community, it is a mother of a community, and so on with everything. So I grew up, part of the time running naked, but another time sharing clothes with all my sisters. Basically, you're wearing it today, tomorrow is my turn, Very simple, no thought about it. Until I actually came to Michigan and I had my winter coat. And I know my people, so I had it hidden somewhere. And of course, we had to find it. And 5 years later, I see this child in a very, very distant village wearing this coat. I said, I bet you anything, this is my coat. It was. True. So when I go home, the things I know that I will need here, they stay here. Otherwise, they're called, you don't go back. And so everything being collective, so when there is an illness in the community, it is because there is something in the community that's not working. That's why the illness comes to say to the community, there's something you have to work on. And so when a child is born with a certain kind of disability, it's not because the parent have accumulated enough karmic debt, to have that child, but it is actually because there's something within the community that is sick, and this child has come to voice that. So it is a community problem. And so growing up in this environment where, all the mothers are your mothers, all the fathers are your fathers, and all the children are your siblings, basically. You took care of each other without even thinking a second, this is not my child. The idea was so foreign that when I came to America and someone would say, would you take care of my child? I was like, you mean our child? They say, no, my child. I was like, oh, okay, that's different. And even the thought when I first came and I asked someone, you are my mom. And she said, I'm not your mother. Wow. I actually think you are my mom. And she said, look, woman, I don't want you to use me to work all your mother issues. I was like, I don't think so. I think I have a whole village of women if I wanted to do that. And in fact, it's true, because 1 year, after hearing all these mother issues, I went back to the village and I said, I actually think that, the way I am is because of all your faults. So I'm sharing with one of my mom, and she says, oh, is that how you feel? I said, yeah. She said, hold on a second. And then she went and rallied all the women who were my mom, and then they all stood in line, and then she said, okay, blame whoever you want. Oh. I was like, okay. And so that is really the basis, of the talk that I'm going to give today. So if we can imagine that we each come into this world because we have something unique we're bringing. Actually, we have written this thesis or this paper stating why we are coming into this universe. And the panel of the elders in the spirit world then look at this and go, wow, this is fantastic. And they put their stamp of approval. And here you go on your journey. So the period of adjusting to the human world, where you get into the dressing room of your mother's womb, where you start to hear her, and through her you hear your environment, and all kind of cacophony and all kind of things, people giggling, people crying. Some of us go, I don't think this is my ideal world, so let me get out of here, yeah? And the rest of us go, bring it on, ready for it. So we come with a mission, we come with a gift. And that gift would determine the kind of trouble we'll end up going through, the kind of people we will end up meeting, the kind of song we will end up singing. So even though we would like to blame our mothers for all the things that ever go wrong in our life, we have to actually go back to this initial thing about why we are actually here. So that if you look into the people who are in the child protective agencies, a lot of those people have gone through the road, the kind of road that will lead them to being the best child protector. So that, you know, they were maybe abused themselves and had to do some healing around that, or maybe they were adopted and had to do something around that so that they can be there. But what is important is that we have to remember that we are a part of something big. And whatever that is, it is very important to remember that we are not just a tourist wandering this realm, but that we are here for a specific purpose. And that calling is what leads you to these conferences, for instance. So the word to gift in my tradition is the same as the word to bless. To gift is the capacity to go into that sacred place within oneself, to be able to bring that very thing that is going to shower the other with goodness for their journey. And so to gift them is to bless them. And so the gift of mothering is the gift of blessing someone with something sacred, something that is healing, something that is nourishing, something that is life-giving. Because when you bless, you have breathed a particular kind of life into the person, which then becomes like the food that will feed their spirit. And that's why, even if you have one person who has ever given you a blessing in your life, you have been gifted with something that nobody else can take. And, you know, when I was growing up, they used to say that I'm going, yeah, right. But as I think about, you know, things that happen in my life, and I think about some of the people who have blessed me, thank you, with something, and I go, oh, yes, I have to go back and say thank you again. Because that is meaningful. And so, thank you. No, in my tradition, I know that it's supposed to be flu and whatever this virus is, and you're not supposed to be excited about it. But in my in my tradition, when you sneeze, it actually means that it's spirit that came in to say, right on. And that's why you say thank you to the person. So going back to you know, the gifting, the gift of mothering. The word mother is actually connected to the sacred. It is something that you cannot separate from the sacred. And because of that sacredness, because the word mom, and I think, where is she, who said something about the South American tradition where we said, no, I was giggling because in one of the languages in Burkina Faso, na means mother. And that's actually what I call my mother, you know, na. And, you know, other places. But I think, you know, in my limited knowledge of language, the word for mother always vibrates with the heart. And so it takes us to that sacred place where there is safety, that sacred place where we are nourished, that sacred place where we can be who we are without any kind of bias, without any kind of fear of being judged by others. And that sacredness of a mother enables us to come home to come home to our community, to come home to who we are, to come home to our gifts as well. And so, and that could, well, let me back up. In many of the African traditions that I know, and also in the diaspora, if you speak about somebody's mother in a negative term, you are creating a war right there. You are not to say something bad about their mother, because it is a direct attack on who they are at their core. And I'll say that more in a second. And that's why it's a no-no word, you know, for many. You know, you can say anything about me, but don't go to my foundation, because that's the first touchdown on this earth. And if you desacralize it, then you are desacralizing me as well. And I would like to actually push that a little more beyond the mother to our intimacy, actually. A lot of the male-female relationship actually comes, in a way, from their need to go back to the mother, to the place where it's sacred, to the place where they're safe. And so a lot of men who are quote-unquote macho, or who are constantly in a crisis-like state, you know that men in crisis want to have intimacy. They want to have sex. Yeah? And for women, you know, when we are in crisis, it's sealed off. And so something in the psyche of a male wants to go back to that place where they feel safe. And that's why they're always pushing, you know, for the intimacy, and not even knowing why they are pushing for that. My ideas are all over the place, so just bear with me. It's like the African way of telling stories, but it will make sense somewhere along the line. And so as we get to that, and we realize that a lot of time when we feel disconnected from who we are, or when we feel basically not who we are, there is a tendency to want to run home. But it is really to run home to someone or to something that holds that mother image for us. And that is part of the reason why, you know, when you men will tend to want to marry a woman who is very much like their mother, even though they will say they don't want to. The crisis actually in the relationship will come when they marry a woman who is either weaker than their mom or stronger than their mom. That's when they need to run back home and report you to mom. Yeah. True. Yeah? And so exploring this gift of mothering, you know, it means that, you know, each one of us is a mother. There is an innate mother in all of us with a capacity to gift the world with something. And that capacity to give the world with a gift that will bring manifests itself at different realms, you know, at the physical, at the mental, at the spiritual. In the physical realm, you know, it is about, you know, the physical, you know, gifting the world with a child, for instance, where we are basically, you know, going on this other initiation, you know, to meet the spirit, you know, in this other world where we then create the bridge for them to exist here. At the mental level, we go into the place where we envision, where we again become pregnant with something, pregnant with a gift that we have to deliver to the universe, which gift is connected also to our purpose here on earth. And so a lot of us may not physically give birth to someone, as in the human form, but we do give birth to a lot of ideas So that this conference on, mothering, is the birth, the conception, of women who have been working on this for a lot of years and then give birth to this conference that we can all participate in. So the question that one must ask themselves is, what am I pregnant with? What is my gift of mothering to the world? Because a lot of women feel bad. Well, we're talking about birthing, but I never given birth. So what do I have to contribute? There's tons you can contribute. Even in my tradition, in my village, when people have not physically, given birth, they have given countless birth to things. That's just amazing. And I can clearly remember that, the first time that, when you talk about unconditional love, really truly unconditional love, it came from my aunt who never bore children. But I tell you, when I'm going crazy, when I go to her, there is something in the way she holds with divine energy that makes me completely one with myself again. And I think that's something we have to remember also. So at the spiritual level, we're constantly giving birth to someone. To mother is also to midwife. Yeah? So in terms of spirituality, we are midwifing someone from one stage of their life to another. In Western terminology, it would be mentoring someone. You are mothering. You are mothering someone through something so that they can go back to the place where they can be whole again, where they can also gift their gift to the community. And so the gift of mothering is everywhere. It's in countless places. So some of us in our spirituality, we become literally the midwife of spirit. We channel spirit, and that's what we do. In our gift of mentoring, we are constantly the one in the community where people call onto us and say, hey, this person is going through this crisis. Can you assist? So you are midwifing when someone comes to you and say, my life has fallen apart. It no longer makes sense. And you can hold their hand and midwife them, going through the valleys and the mountains and the Sahara Desert of their life, so you can give birth to them again to the other side. Huh? And so that's the reason why in my tradition you never call someone mother unless you're holding them within that sacred energy, unless you really go into that place where it makes sense for you to tap into that healing energy and bring it out. And so you will hear in my tradition, they'll call even little babies mama. And that's because they're invoking that mothering energy that would bring forward their gift and so forth. And so in my tradition, the gift of mothering starts as early as the time we are even conceived. It starts with the seed within us wanting to nurture someone. And that's why when a child wants to nurture someone, they never say no. They let them do it, because that's the mother in them rising. And it has to be invited out. It has to be let to be, and so on. And so when you do, you then help them hold that energy, then they do grow up knowing how to mother themselves as well. You see?
Sorry, 5 minutes.
Oh, really? Oh, I was getting warm. Okay, I'll try to make it very short. So if the world knew how to gift each other with a gift of mothering, with blessing each other with something that is life-giving, there will be less crime, there will not be a need for war, there will not be a need for crisis. But because we have moved so far away from that source, we have ended up in a place where we have actually created a desert, where we are constantly struggling, fighting, and sometimes we wonder, where is that place of the mothering that we actually once was, where it was whole again? And so how do we begin to come back to that? It is through learning to move away from the individual to the collective. And it is moving from the independence to the interdependency. It's moving from the place where we are outstandish to the place where we claim each other, where we open our arms and really take in, where we accept one another, not tolerate, because you only tolerate when you don't know what else to do not to kill the person. Not true? And so it's to mother means to go beyond one limitation, one judgment, to create that honeycomb in one's heart, in one's soul, where the other can exist and be at peace with one. So it is really, truly embracing, taking in the other, and that means the self also. And so it is a process of going from, where I'm standing to the pool where we all belong, where we all are important, where we all matter, and so on. So I tend to think I have more time than I actually do. Am I done?
No, you still have 2 minutes.
I still have 2 whole minutes. So, so I'll just say this other small point. So because of this gift of mothering that we have, in my tradition, it is considered to be a journey, when an initiation. When you midwife, when you mother someone, it is a way of creating alliances with the spirit world and with this dimension, so you can produce something sacred. So mother being sacred, child therefore is sacred. And because in my tradition they say the first person you hear, the first person you live off of, you feed off of, is your mother. It's only befitting that the children will then carry the name of the mother. So my last name, Somé, is actually my mother's name. Although both my parents are Somé, and a few years ago the government decided that it's no longer cool for children to carry their mother's name because it's too confusing for the paperwork. So when my father would want to create some steam in the house, he would say, woman, you actually know that with this new system that is being put in place, that the children are actually carrying my name. There's war that's going to come out of that. But the last name also has special meaning because it is also a gateway to the mythical dimension. So the physical manifestation of Somé is rabbit, which actually means the messenger to spirit. And so my mother has gifted me with the gift to connect with spirit. And so thank you everyone for being here and for